When we think of prison, we often picture a controlled environment with strict rules and regulations. But what happens when those rules are broken by the most dangerous inmates in the world? These individuals have caused chaos, destruction, and fear within the walls of prison, leaving behind a trail of violence and risky behavior that has put the safety of the entire prison population at risk. In this video, we dive deep into the unnerving world of the most dangerous prison inmates, uncovering the shocking stories of their criminal acts that have earned them a reputation as some of the most terrifying people on the planet. Brace yourself for a jaw-dropping journey as we reveal the unbelievable tales of the 5 most dangerous prison inmates in the world. Kicking off the list from number 5, Thomas Silverstein. Prisoner Thomas Silverstein, who spent one of the longest periods of time in solitary confinement in United States history, passed away at the age of 67 in a Colorado hospital. The nickname Terrible Tommy aptly applied to Silverstein, who was serving a life term without the possibility of parole. More than half his life, or 35 years, had been spent in a dark, soundproof cell with the lights on. After viciously killing prison guard Merle Klutz, Silverstein was labeled the most dangerous inmate in America and sent to solitary confinement. On October 22, 1983, the killer had Klutz walk in front of him as they were both released from the Marion Supermax prison for a shower. He borrowed a shank from a fellow inmate and used a makeshift key to free himself from his restraints. Then, he pounced on his chance to strike, stabbing Klutz multiple times with the shank. Upon Klutz's death, Silverstein accused the security guard of harassing him. The guard, Robert Hoffman, was stabbed to death by Silverstein's accomplice, Clayton Fountain, just hours afterward. Silverstein was moved to a no-human contact cell in Atlanta prison after the attack. In 1971, when Silverstein was only 19 years old, he was arrested for the first time for armed robbery. He had served 4 years in a California prison before getting granted parole and released. Not long after his release, Terrible Tommy and his father and cousin were apprehended for a third time in connection with 3 separate armed robberies. Once again, he spent 15 years in a Kansas prison after being arrested in 1977. There, he got affiliated with the Aryan Brotherhood, a neo-Nazi gang that acts as a criminal organization both inside and outside of American jails. In 1980, Silverstein was found guilty of the murder of Danny Atwell, a fellow inmate who had allegedly refused to serve as a drug mule for the gang. Although his murder conviction was overturned, he was given a life sentence without the possibility of parole and transferred to the maximum security USP Marion prison. Well, there he got into even more trouble, as he started to take out rival gang leaders. But the murder of the guard that we mentioned earlier is what really got him sent into permanent solitary confinement. Next on our infamous list, Charles Bronson. Michael Peterson, a notorious convict, entered the world on December 25, 1952 in Luton, Bedfordshire. His criminal record for armed robbery in 1974, coupled with his reputation as a volatile inmate, has kept him incarcerated for the majority of the past 4 decades.
And it was all blanked. I wanted to come off Cat A.
Bronson's journey to prison began at the tender age of 22, when he was convicted of armed robbery and causing bodily harm. Since then, he has been closely monitored within the walls of Wood Hill Prison in Milton Keynes, with only brief moments of freedom. Bronson's notoriety stems from his repeated assaults on prison guards and other prisoners. In 1975, he struck another inmate with a glass jug, and in 1985, he staged a daring 3-day rooftop protest. In 1994, Bronson crossed the line by kidnapping a prison librarian and demanding a cup of tea, an inflatable doll, and a helicopter as ransom. 4 years later, he held 3 prisoners at London's Belmarsh prison hostage. He further added to his criminal record by holding a prison education worker at HMP Hull for 44 long hours, leading to a discretionary life sentence with a minimum of 4 years. Bronson's violent tendencies remained constant throughout the years. In 2014, he was given an additional 2 years in prison for putting the HMP Wood Hill prison warden in a headlock. Despite his repeated offenses, he was denied parole at HMP Wakefield in West Yorkshire in 2017. After a year, the charges of attempting to severely hurt the jail governor were dropped against him. Alexander Pichushkin. Alexander Pichushkin, also known as the chessboard killer, perpetrated a reign of terror in and around Moscow between 1992 and 2006, taking the lives of at least 49 people. He earned his place in history as one of the most prolific and monstrous serial killers of all time. At the age of 18, Pichushkin began his ruthless killing spree, with his first victim being a fellow student whom he pushed into a work pit. In a later interview, Pichushkin confessed that he had intended to kill the child but was thwarted by onlookers.
60 убийств, все на территории Битцевского лесопарка.
Pichushkin continued his killing spree, targeting individuals whom he believed had wronged him. His modus operandi involved luring his victims to secluded areas before bludgeoning them to death with a hammer or metal pipe. Interestingly, Pichushkin had a bizarre fascination with the number 64, the same number of squares on a chessboard, and sought to take the lives of 64 people. Pichushkin's killing spree came to a halt after his arrest and subsequent conviction on 49 counts of murder in 2006. He was given a life sentence, and all the charges against him were proven to be true. Pichushkin has been confined to a maximum security facility in Russia since his conviction, where he will live out the remainder of his days. Richard Ramirez. Serial killer Richard Ramirez, alias the Night Stalker, was a notorious figure in American history. His acts were especially brutal, and he had little compassion for those he had wronged. Ramirez was notorious for breaking into houses at night and murdering their occupants as they slept.
Comment on my LA convictions and on my pending case here in San Francisco.
Ramirez was on a killing spree during 1984 to 1985, committing at least 13 homicides and 5 attempted homicides, along with 11 sexual assaults and 14 burglaries. His victims ranged in age from 6 to 83, and he frequently taunted authorities and the public by leaving satanic symbols at the scenes of his crimes. Ramirez's heinous actions sent shockwaves through the neighborhoods he terrorized. Many residents built security systems and started locking their doors and windows at night as a precaution against the Night Stalker. In 1985, the police were able to identify and apprehend him, putting an end to his reign of terror. The trial of Ramirez was one of the most widely covered instances of the day. As a result of his horrifying murders and weird courtroom antics, he became one of the most notorious serial killers in history, and his name was soon known around the world. Charles Manson. Charles Manson, a cult leader and a notorious serial killer, utilized manipulation and brainwashing techniques to incite his followers to commit heinous atrocities. His troubled childhood began with his birth in Ohio in 1934.
Man in solitary confinement, break my teeth out, break my ribs, brush me up, kick me down a hole.
And was marked by several incarcerations, spending much of his youth behind bars. After moving to California in the 1960s, Manson drew a cult following that came to be known as the Manson family. He portrayed himself as a messianic figure, manipulating his followers into fearing a race war, which he dubbed Helter Skelter. With the outbreak of the supposed conflict, and his disciples planned to emerge victorious from their underground bunker in Death Valley. On August 9, 1969, 4 of Manson's followers brutally murdered actress Sharon Tate, who was 8 months pregnant, along with 3 others. The horrific murders shook the nation, and Manson was swiftly identified as the prime suspect. His trial became one of the most widely covered in media history. Manson's unpredictable behavior and wild disruptive outbursts in court made him a media celebrity. Although he was originally sentenced to death for his role in the conspiracy to commit murder, his sentence was later commuted to life in prison. Manson proved to be an incredibly dangerous inmate due to his ability to manipulate and influence his fellow prisoners. He frequently incited violence and was involved in fights with both inmates and guards, often leading to prison riots. Even while incarcerated, Manson continued to spread hate and inspire violence as a white supremacist and misogynist. So, that's all the time we have today, folks. Hope you enjoyed this video. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel and do hit the bell icon on your way out. See you all next time, folks.